Last week, we brought you top 40 running back updated rankings. This week, we're updating you with a top 50 wide receiver dynasty rankings here. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight into it. We have a lot to talk about. Keep in mind, we're going into week 8 of the season, so a lot of things can change as you're watching this video later on down the road. So keep that in mind. Zach is going to take us through his tiers. So let's start off with you, Zach. Take us through tier 1 and 2. I'm assuming tier 1 is small. But take us through tier 1 and 2. Small. Yeah, take us through tier 1 and 2.
And I'll just say as well, like there could be people who watch this a month from now, and this has completely changed.
100%.
Dynasty rankings are so fluid. We learn new information every week on players who are already proven, on young players who haven't proven anything yet.
That is correct.
Dynasty rankings all about projecting into the future, so it's a little bit of mix of what we could see versus what we know. But the tier 1 really hasn't changed for me. It's still Justin Jefferson as my 1, Chase as my 2. I think they're interchangeable. You had, oddly enough, you might have had a buy low window on both of these guys this year.
Yeah.
Jamar Chase, I know I was able to buy Joe Burrow in a couple leagues, including a home league. I tried to buy Jamar Chase, but most of the people in my leagues were still pretty strong. But over on the Twitter sphere, I saw a lot of people getting some cool deals for Chase done. And now Jefferson, we've seen a lot of deals in our leagues, Badaki, where Jefferson has been moved, and for fair value. But this is, I would say, without injury or without Joe Burrow playing below what we expect from him, there would not have been any buy low opportunity this year for these two guys. But they're still my 1 and 2.
Yeah, completely agree. 1 and 2, however way you want to do it. I know a lot of people are, questioning the longevity of Kirk Cousins. Who's this quarterback going to be? But I think we can all agree that Justin Jefferson is quarterback proof. At least we hope and believe that's going to be the case. We actually haven't seen
the talent will outshine the situation.
Yeah, we haven't seen him with a different quarterback. But agreed, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, both in tier 1.
Okay, tier 2. So, I've really tried to start defining my tiers up at the top a little bit more. And I will say this is a player that I had ranked inside my top 5. I did not have him inside the top 3. And I just think with what he's doing, he might not be 23 years old, but the guy is an elite asset without question. That is A.J. Brown. Obviously, some talk coming into the year where if you looked at week 2 onwards from last year, Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown had very similar fantasy output. This year, we're seeing a lot of those secondary stars in the wide receiver room in particular kind of take a back seat. And
Right.
A.J. Brown has just dominated this wide receiver room. He and Jalen Hurts are on a different level as far as their connection goes. The guy's breaking records that only Calvin Johnson has done as far as receiving yardage in straight games, over 125, I believe, in 4 straight games.
Yeah.
So A.J. Brown, my wide receiver 3. And then my wide receiver 4, the only other player in this tier for me is Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Okay.
Amon-Ra Dog St. Brown. The guy's been going off, and he is the focal point of the offense. Like, it's David Montgomery and it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. That is what the Lions run through. And I'm no longer, we weren't doing this in the offseason anyway, but I'm no longer going to discount Amon-Ra because he wasn't a first-round pick. I think that would be the wrong move. So those are the only 2 guys in my tier 2. And it's not to disrespect the other names that are in my tier 3. It's just more to put respect on the names of A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both currently, once again, we're going into week 8. Wide receiver 3 for A.J. Brown. Wide receiver 9 for Amon-Ra. From weeks 3 onwards, ever since A.J. Brown had that little cry, said that I need to be the focal point, my guy is wide receiver 1 from weeks 3 to week 7. And it feels like that's going to continue.
It's been really annoying as well as a Devonta Smith.
100%.
But, you can't do anything but watch A.J. Brown play and say, it makes sense. Give the guy the ball.
Exactly. And Amon-Ra is doing his thing. So, look, I love both of these 2. All these 4 guys are actually in the top 2 tiers. Take us to your tier 3.
Yeah, and again, I'll just say, like, the guys in tier 3, you could easily make a case for them being in tier 2. I just wanted to discern and, I guess, give props to those guys in tier 2. It's not that the tier 3 guys are worth a huge amount less. It's just they have shown up and they've done big things. CeeDee Lamb would be my wide receiver 5 in Dynasty right now. I'm not really ready to give up on CeeDee Lamb. I've seen some narratives around the old Twitter sphere. You know how dangerous that can be. But, you know, CeeDee Lamb's not the alpha. He's not the guy. We saw what he did last year. And I think CeeDee Lamb is kind of a prisoner a little bit of mediocre quarterback play and a schedule where he hasn't been necessary to their offense. I mean, again, I don't want to make an excuse, but think about it. They blew out the Giants in week 1, 40-0.
Mm-hmm.
There was no reason to use CeeDee Lamb in that game. In week 2, they blew out the Jets. In week 3, they lost to the Cardinals. I'll give you that. In weeks 4, they blew out, the Patriots.
Right.
It just, he hasn't been like necessary in many of these games where it's been even game script. I still believe in CeeDee Lamb. I still think he's a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty. My wide receiver 6 would be Garrett Wilson. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but I also want to, think about the future as well. I have no doubts that Aaron Rodgers is going to play next year for this team. And a full year of Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, we could be talking about Garrett Wilson all the way in tier 1. Truly.
100%.
Watching Garrett Wilson this year and seeing the target share that he's earned, if you were all in on Garrett Wilson, you were right. You were right, yeah. It's just, it didn't work out due to factors that you can't control. And then the last player in tier 3, again, I want to look at Dynasty in a span of a 2 to 3 year window, not just 5, 10 years. And that's where I would put Tyreek Hill here. I think we got to put some respect on his name. Now, clearly, if you're a redraft player, you're going to say, what the hell? You got Tyreek Hill this low? But we know Tyreek Hill has publicly stated he will retire after his contract. Is he going to be a porn star? Who knows? But that's what he said. Probably not. He's probably joking. I don't know.
Probably. I mean,
regardless,
we don't know.
You are getting elite production for however many years he's going to play. Even if he extends his contract, you're getting elite production. I love the situation he's in, the perfect coaching staff, the perfect quarterback to be with him. So those are the guys in my tier 3.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, look, I love all these guys. I'm completely with you. CeeDee Lamb, guy I have in multiple league. I'm really interested to see what, the Cowboys do in the quarterback room. I doubt they're going to move on for him, but
yeah,
we'll wait and see what that looks like. Maybe
it is strange because he's been pretty subpar.
Exactly. Exactly.
But in some games he's been great. It's just like, oof.
Yeah, it's just
concerning.
Like, come on, brother. Like, you got CeeDee. Do you know? Yeah. Garrett Wilson, I completely agree, and Tyreek Hill. I mean, another 3 years on his contract as I'm looking at it through 2026.
Two after this one, right? Or is it?
I guess you have 2024.
Three altogether?
You have 2024, 2025, 2026.
Okay, gotcha.
So 3 years after that, hopefully he stays up. 29 years old. I completely agree. I'm really interested to see who you have in your tier 4.
Yeah, tier 4 is funky, but I still love all these wide receivers in Dynasty. I'll put Chris Olave there. Now, obviously, we found out yesterday that he was arrested for reckless driving. I believe he went 35 over in a 35, so 70 in a 35.
Mm-hmm.
And now I haven't been able to watch this, but I got an alert that there's body cam footage of him being arrested. Apparently, Olave said, I play for the Saints, and the officer said, and?
Who gives a who gives a shit, my guy?
I don't know. I don't. I mean, we just saw Jordan Addison before the year.
Yeah.
Similar situation. I don't think this is going to be a big issue long term. So I love Chris Olave.
I agree.
You look on a per game basis, he was better than Garrett Wilson last year, but obviously you prefer Garrett Wilson's quarterback for the next 2 years or so. I would have Waddle here. Rough start. We told you guys to buy him over on the redraft channel, and he's kind of come through recently. Puka Nacua. Yes, a top 10 wide receiver for me in my Dynasty rankings. I am happy to answer any questions that you might have on that. And then how about Brandon Ayuk making his way into tier 4, my wide receiver 11, and then Stephon Diggs. Now, you could make a case that, hey, maybe Stephon Diggs should be right by Tyreek Hill. And I'm not going to fight you against that if someone felt that way. I just feel better about the wide receivers that I have ahead of him than Stephon Diggs. So, yeah, I mean, that is my tier 4. That's my top 12, if you will. What questions or differences of opinion we might have, let me know.
Yeah, one thing that I have been pondering myself as specifically a Waddle owner is I am not saying he is bad. I'm saying where does it get better?
Sure.
You know, he has been so far this mid wide receiver, you know, 11 points, 12 points, 14 points. His biggest outing so far, week 6, over 18 points. Not saying he is bad wide receiver, just saying is he just more going to be a complimentary guy to Tyreek, where he's just going to be a good low end mid to wide receiver too. Like, I'm not necessarily sure he is the 1A with Tyreek in this offense. If Tyreek wasn't on this team, he's one, right? He is the number one. He's somebody you can see getting those Tyreek Hill type of opportunities. But if Tyreek Hill is going to be here for the next 3 years, I'm a little bit concerned that you're going to have those 20-plus point games.
That's
but
fair.
I think we need to anticipate that the 14, the 12, the 13 type of point games is kind of what we're expecting. So we should be expecting rest of the season or maybe in the next 3 years. So I'm a little bit concerned there. Not saying I'm off Waddle once again, just questioning the situation.
I can definitely hear you. I'm just going back to the 2 years that we've seen that were really good with him. You know, his rookie season with the same quarterback, Tua, breaks the receiving record. With Mike McDaniel, I think they're going to figure out a way to feature him still. Now, no, he's never going to be Tyreek Hill while Tyreek Hill's there, but there's a scenario in which Waddle signs a long-term contract, and eventually Tyreek Hill does move on.
Right.
And you still got a very young asset who steps into that alpha role. But regardless, we're going to see boom-bust games from Waddle. He was that even last year when he finished as a top 10 guy. I just believe there are better games ahead for Waddle than what we've currently seen. But I definitely hear the narrative and the concern, and it's valid.
Yeah.
It's definitely valid. But,
no, look, I completely agree. And I guess moving on to Puka, and I think this will be the last person we'll talk about in this tier. You know, a lot of people want to say, how can you trust Puka with the longevity of maybe Matthew Stafford's contract? What's going to happen there? Is he still going to be the same without Matthew Stafford? Is he going to be the same without Sean McVay? Do you trust that what we're seeing here is something that he can produce with anyone? Is he, in the first 7 weeks, someone that is, we have to look at the talent over the situation when the situation starts to change and just trust in Puka? Or at this very moment, you just have to say he's a top 12 wide receiver because of how he's performing?
It's a fair question. What I like to remind people is that we have had the NFL for over 100 years. It's been, a part of American culture all of our lives. Over 100 years. Nobody in that 100-year time span has had a better start to their wide receiver career than Puka Nacua. Like, in almost every statistical category. Now, is he a beneficiary of a system and targets? Absolutely. However, before the year, coming into this year, I was like, dang, I don't know how long we're going to see Stafford. I don't know how long we're going to see Sean McVay. But honestly, I'm putting myself in their shoes. This is fun again. I like doing this again.
Yeah.
If I'm Matthew Stafford, oh my God, I have maybe a top 10 wide receiver core in the NFL right now between Puka, Cooper Kupp, and Tutu Atwell. If I'm Sean McVay, I'm looking at him saying, dang, this young defense is stepping up, the secondary stepping up, Matthew Stafford's playing really well. I'm enjoying coaching again, So I can't really control exactly what happens. Sure, Puka might take a hit if there's a different coach, but I don't see Sean McVay stopping anytime. And as far as like the Puka and Cooper Kupp narrative, it's funny because you haven't brought this up. I know some people are like, Puka's going to die with Cooper Kupp. Well, since Cooper Kupp's been back, Puka has out-targeted him. He's had more receptions. He's had less receiving yards. But still, it's not like this is a 1 and then huge tier down to a 2. Like, these guys are pretty much on an equal playing field. And we talked about it on the Redraft channel, but this is the new Robert Woods. Remember, there were weeks when Robert Woods didn't have the best games and Cooper Kupp went off. But that's going to kind of be how you play it the rest of the year. And the last thing I'll say, Badaki, is you and I watched that Rams game last week together. You cannot tell me that guy is not extremely talented.
Oh,
it's more my belief that the NFL missed than Puka is just lucky because some of the catches that he's making, the athleticism, that is not normal.
Yeah. And
it's almost like Amon-Ra St. Brown. What does Puka need to do until people are like, yeah, I'm going to put respect on his name? Like, Well, yeah, Monra wasn't drafted high. I know Monra was a better high school prospect. That doesn't matter at this point. So it's
College
like,
prospect,
at what point
right.
do we put respect on his name? At what point do
Yeah.
we give him credit for what he's doing? You know,
Yeah.
it's a tough call, and I hear people, but yeah, Puka's legit in my mind.
Definitely agree. Look, Matthew Stafford are currently on contract until 2026. So keep that in mind. Cooper Kupp on contract until 2026 as well. They have an out at 2025. So at least you have another good year with Puka and Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp that you should feel confident in. Take us to your tier 5, brother.
Okay, tier 5. This is where it gets fun.
Here we go.
There's a lot of projection and youth, if you will. Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's been around this range for me before the year, and he hasn't really moved. I know he hasn't performed, but I think it's safe to say that we can all acknowledge that he is a prisoner of his situation at the moment. We know how talented he is. Look at what he did the one game DK Metcalf was inactive.
Yeah.
You know, if this team had no Tyler Lockett, we'd be starting JSN every week. We know how old Tyler Lockett is. He's not as crucial to the offense as he was last year. We're starting to see JSN's snap percentages go up. He's not dominating any sort of 12 personnel, but when you look at 3 wide receiver sets, he's always in there, and he's an exciting player to watch. The talent is not the question for me. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment where I devalue this talent, because there's a situation where, based off of what I've seen, we could continually see him worked in heavier into the game plan, and this time next year, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 10 asset in everyone's rankings. So yeah, I would also have Jordan Addison here. I would also have Zay Flowers here. If you drafted one of these 3 rookie wide receivers in the first round of your rookie draft, you should feel great about it. You should feel absolutely fantastic about it.
Pleasant.
I love me some Jordan Addison. I love me some Zay Flowers. All 3 of these guys I have a very high percentage of across my dynasty leagues. And maybe I am a prisoner of the moment, but I would have those guys ahead of Devonta Smith. I'd be happy to discuss any of those concerns or conversations. I would have them above T. Higgins at this moment. Drake London is in the same tier. And then DK Metcalf and DJ Moore. You know, I was so close to moving DK Metcalf down a tier because this was my concern coming into the year. You know, I made an article over on the Flock Fantasy website just talking about how, he's a fun NFL player, but as for fantasy, he's been disappointing. I mean, on a per-game basis, the guy is typically around wide receiver 24 or so, and we're all valuing him as this top 15 dynasty wide receiver.
Yeah.
Now you add a guy like JSN in, who I think over time will demand targets, whereas DK Metcalf will be more of your efficiency, big play type of receiver. But I just feel like people are going to absolutely, outrage in the comments if I don't have him and JSN in the same tier.
I mean,
so I got to do that. But this is my concern for Metcalf coming in.
Yeah.
But he's still an elite NFL talent. It's just he's not anyone like a Tyreek or an Amon-Ra or a Garrett Wilson who's just demanding so many targets. There's a lot of options there.
Yeah, and let's just start off with DK. Weeks 1 to 6, I'm just looking at what he's done so far. He's wide receiver 36 before or after the bye week and before that injury. Obviously, that bye week probably does hinder him a little bit. But if you really think about what he's done, he hasn't done anything. Even if you look at the first 4 weeks of the season, DK Metcalf, wide receiver 22. So many different questions, so many different ways. Talk to me about putting Devonta Smith behind some of these rookie wide receivers.
Yeah, and I'll just say quickly on DK, when I wrote that article, I went back to look at it. On points per game by year. In 2019, DK was 41st in points per game. In 2020, he was 10th. In 2021, he was 20th. And in 2022, he was 24th. So in the last 2 years, and now in the last 3 years, if we include this year, he's not even been top 20 on a per game basis. So again, it's not the talent that's the issue. It's really volume and target and efficiency in the red zone. But anyway, as far as Devonta Smith goes, I just want to say as well, guys, I feel like people will overreact to me doing that. Focus more on the tiers, not so much where they're placed. I'm saying in tier 5, I would say these guys have similar value to each other, So, yeah, if you love Devonta Smith, you could put him at the top of this. However, with what I'm currently seeing, I'm seeing A.J. Brown take over. I'm seeing Devonta Smith not play to his absolute potential. And I'm seeing Dallas Goedert be an important piece of that offense, where I watch Zay Flowers. He is unquestionably, in my opinion, the number one wide receiver on that team. And he is one of the most exciting players to watch. As far as Jordan Addison goes, with Jordan Addison, you have a situation where he's in a system with Kevin O'Connell where all they do is throw the ball. They were top 2 in passing attempts per game last year. This year, they're top 3. This team is throwing the ball more than any team in the last 3 years, and Jordan Addison is finally getting a chance to shine. I don't see a scenario in which, when Justin Jefferson is back, that he's not in 2 wide receiver sets now instead of KJ Osborne. And as far as JSN, I just prefer the talent long term, and maybe that's a little bit of bias because I love JSN.
Right.
But yeah, that's where I currently stand on that. Again, if you have Devon Smith higher, fair enough. I could be a prisoner of the moment. My bad, but this is where I would currently stand. But it's not like if I had Devonta Smith and someone sent me JSN, I would send them a first back. Right. But they're all in the same tier for me.
Yeah, for me, I would definitely have Devonta Smith still ahead. Okay. And I think I'm just thinking about the situation. I think about quarterback. I think about long term. And oddly enough, I think Zay Flowers feels like the most secure person when I think about the quarterback outside of, at least from the ones that we have spoken about so far this year, or so I guess in this tier, out of the rookie wide receivers, he feels like he is going to be the guy long term. We saw how important he is to this offense. You can see that OBJ, Rashad Bateman are just not the answer. And Zay Flowers, even if they bring in somebody else, he is going to be the quick pass, quick slant, deep ball type of threat, no matter the case. Yeah, and it's phenomenal.
You can make a case, actually, that between those 4, Smith, Flowers, Addison, and JSN, Lamar has been the best quarterback play as far as watching the game, reading defenses, accuracy.
Marvelous.
No disrespect to Jalen Hurts, but this is not the same Jalen Hurts we saw last year, for sure, so far.
Completely agree. All right, take us to your tier 6.
All right, tier 6. How about George Pickens?
Come on, George.
It's funny because, I have been a George Pickens guy since he was drafted. You guys know that quote I always used to say. Some people were just born to do certain things, right? Pablo Picasso was born to paint. George Pickens was born to play football. I wonder where people stand now. Like, every video we made, Badaki, it was either George Pickens is too high, George Pickens is too low. I wonder where people stand now in the comments. Let's see. Michael Pittman Jr., I would not be surprised if I'm getting some hate on putting him this low. He has been great, but there have been some really lucky plays in his favor. And if Gardner Minshew was a quarterback for the next 3 years, I would be very comfortable putting Michael Pittman probably in my top 15. But I still have my concerns on Anthony Richardson being a consistent quarterback for his fantasy wide receivers. I mean, Anthony Richardson's not playing, and now we're seeing Josh Downs being a legit flex option. And Anthony Richardson's going to have no opportunity to really improve that part of his game because he is having surgery. So that's a concern for me. I would have Cooper Kupp here. I would have Devontae Adams. I don't want to disrespect them too much. But guys who are around the age of 30, maybe I am being too disrespectful to Cooper Kupp. Maybe he does deserve to be around Stephon Diggs, but this is where I would currently value him. He's not someone that I would want to build around long term. I put Hollywood Brown here. Nice. Really love him, and I'm excited for Kyler Murray to come back. And how about a new addition to the top 30 at least?
Here we go.
Rashee Rice.
Richie Rich.
Welcome in Rashee Rice. He has been very efficient on a low percentage of snaps, and as we get closer or further and further into the year, he's getting more snaps and more opportunities. And I love what he can do after the catch in particular. Deebo Samuel I have in this tier, and then Nico Collins.
Oh boy. Give it to Nico, huh?
I think there could be a legit situation where, Nico Collins has broken out, especially with CJ Stroud at quarterback. He's a wide receiver 16 on the year. The only concern for me is I still think Tank Dell is going to take some away from Nico Collins when he's healthy. He had that concussion that he had been dealing with for a while. And as much as I love Nico, would it surprise me if the Texans sign a big name wide receiver or draft one in the first round?
Yeah, that is
not this year or next year. Because I know they don't have the first, but I still think there's a scenario in which, as good as Nico is, they're like, okay, that was great. Let's get T. Higgins, So there's still like some concern for me. I don't want to just value him only based off what I've seen this year. But again, we're kind of like tightroping across the year. Dynasty rankings in the middle of the season are so difficult, so difficult. So yeah.
Yeah, look, completely agree. Love this tier. Don't want to spend too much time because of time's sake here on tier 6, but I love Rashee Rice coming in, stepping up to this opportunity. He's continued to improve.
Yeah.
Hollywood Brown, I mean, we've seen him do stuff with Josh Dobbs. Just imagine how he does with Kyler Murray.
When he was with Kyler Murray last year, by the way, before his injury, he was a top 6 wide receiver.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
I mean, there's just great opportunity there. And I would agree. This is the last person I'll probably talk about here on this tier is Michael Pittman. Definitely some question marks moving forward. He's already expressed how frustrated he is. After his only 2 receptions this past week, even though he made the best out of it.
Yeah.
Once again, we're recording this going into week 8, so that was week 7 that I'm referring to.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
I'm just very interested to see if he is going to stay on this team because I know, if I'm not mistaken, he has his last year of his contract this year. And they might go a different route. I'm not necessarily sure if Michael Pittman is the right fit with Anthony Richardson long term, personally.
And that excites me. Like, I'm imagining Michael Pittman in Houston.
Yeah, exactly.
That is very exciting.
That would be great.
What I would say is if I had a chance to flip Michael Pittman for a struggling Devonta Smith, I'd do it. A Zay Flowers, a struggling T. Higgins, I do it. A Drake London, I do it. So, I mean, call me a hater, call me whatever you want to. I still struggle with the idea of Anthony Richardson being the guy who I'm relying on getting my wide receiver fantasy points. And I know he had a good week 1, but a lot of that came off of a broken play of that screen pass, and it was kind of hit and miss with A-Rich under quarterback. Gardner Minshew's been the much better fantasy producer for those wide receivers.
All right, take us through your tier 7 now.
Yeah, and I'll just say just quickly, like tier 7, tier 8 sounds so low, but these are all still guys that I like and that I value. It's just you have to rank them in some order, right?
Yeah.
But here I would have Terry McLaurin. It was my stance before the year that Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson shouldn't have been ranked as far apart as I was starting to see. And I loved Jahan Dotson coming in. Like, I'm not saying I didn't. I absolutely loved him coming in. But I still felt like Terry, with the contract that he was given and what we had seen from his career, I felt like he was still going to be the one. I'll put him here at the beginning of tier 7. Quarterback play is weird. The usage is weird. The offense is strange. But I still love the player. Christian Watson has not really had a chance to be healthy and get on the same page with this quarterback, but I still like the talent. A lot of these are dog days for Christian Watson owners. Like, do you believe in the talent or not? You have to decide. And how about this? Ladies and gentlemen?
Here we go.
My wide receiver 31 in Dynasty. I just traded for him last night, Badaki, in our home Dynasty league. Jacoby Myers.
Who trades for Jacoby Myers?
As soon as I did it, I put in the chat, who the hell trades for Jacoby Myers? Yes, I traded Jerry Jeudy for Jacoby Myers. Roast me if you want, but I am competing and I want to win right now. Jacoby Myers is a wide receiver 12 on the year, and he missed a game in week 2. He hasn't had his bye week, but he's missed a game, and he's a wide receiver 12. With Jimmy G, he's been averaging over 20 points per game. I believe that regardless of who's the coach, regardless of who's the quarterback, I think he's more than proven that New England just missed. They just whiffed. How was this guy not the focal point of your offense? And I know he was getting a lot of targets there, but how did you not design the offense around Jacoby Myers? That guy is a great route runner. He's great after the catch, and he's a reliable target. So he's only 26 years old. This isn't a 29-year-old player. He's young. He just signed a contract. He's made Hunter Renfrow irrelevant, who had a top 10 year a couple years ago. So, yeah, I like Jacoby Myers here.
Agreed. Yeah.
I'll just finish out the rest of the tier. Christian Kirk, who, at the moment, you have to rank him higher than Calvin Ridley. Even if I liked Ridley more before the year, you have to. Chris Godwin, I would put here. Keenan Allen, a little bit older. The reason he's so low in my rankings is because the only scenario in which you want Keenan Allen on your team is if you were all in full beans trying to win a championship. Then we got Amari Cooper and then Calvin Ridley in this tier. Some people might be completely out on Calvin Ridley, and I can understand that. I can totally understand where they're coming from. But watching the All-22 film, I cannot give up on the guy. I mean, he still looks like an incredible route runner. He was open a lot in last week's game versus the Saints. Just Trevor Lawrence did not look his way. We talked about it on the other channel, but it was like, okay, I'm Trevor Lawrence. Where's Calvin Ridley? He's over here. Okay, let's hike the ball. Okay, where is anyone else on the field? But the guy was open, and he was getting open consistently. And I think they're going to figure out a way to kind of get him more involved. But that's the tier 7 for me.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, I think Calvin Ridley, I would say, is the biggest name in this tier. You know, I know you were a big advocate of Calvin Ridley. Not saying I wasn't or was anti-Calvin Ridley. I was just more concerned. One of my biggest things coming into this year was that I don't think it was automatically going to click. And I think we can kind of see that in the first 7 weeks, even though Trevor Lawrence has been looking his way. You can't really do much with Calvin. You kind of have to keep him. You can't trade him away. You hope next year is better, even though this is his only 1-year contract, which also questions to say, does he go to another team? Do they extend Calvin Ridley if he continues with this boomer bust production? Because they're saying, okay, is Calvin Ridley winning us games, or is Calvin Ridley not really producing the way we hope for? And I think that's going to really lead to where Calvin Ridley is going to end up in his career, if he's going to be this high caliber guy that we thought, or he's going to fall off. At least that's my prediction.
I mean, like I said, based off of what I've seen on film, I don't think he's lost anything.
Agreed. Completely agreed.
But that's just my personal opinion. Mm-hmm. And if he was to enter free agency, I could imagine him being a very highly sought after player.
Yeah. I would completely agree there. Don't agree with anyone else on this tier. Christian Kirk has been great. Jacoby Myers has been great.
You don't disagree, or
I'm sorry, I don't disagree. You're right.
I was like, damn, the whole tier.
Then the whole tier, absolute dog water. No, everything else.
I'm trying my best.
I hear you, Christian Kirk, Jacoby Myers. Terry is just unlucky. The best thing, really quick, for your Washington team, I think they can still be mid. This is the year that you don't want to make the playoffs. This is the year that you're probably happy to be mid with the list of quarterbacks coming into this 2024 class.
I'm telling you, dude, it just doesn't matter. We're going to be somewhere right in the middle where we miss out on a quarterback. That is every year for the
How many quarterbacks are really going to go in the first round, though? I mean, Caleb, Drake.
There's a lot of good quarterbacks this year, so that's definitely helpful.
I mean, we'll wait and see. There's so much. Take us through your tier 8, our last tier for the video.
Tier 8. I would say if you're rebuilding, then you'd probably prefer the first 2 guys over Calvin Ridley and Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen, and that makes total sense to me. Tank Dell and Josh Downs. Absolutely. If you're rebuilding, hey, I want Tank Dell over those guys. Okay, that makes sense. I can see where you're coming from. But in all other scenarios, I would prefer the other names.
Okay.
This is where I would have Jerry Jeudy. I still think he's a very talented player. But at this point, it is really hard to be all in on Jerry Jeudy at this point.
I completely agree.
Difficult.
Completely agree.
Deontay Johnson, in fact, I think you could probably value Deontay Johnson over Jerry Jeudy at this point. This is where I would put Jahan Dotson, a player that I absolutely love, but I cannot defend right now. I cannot defend. Some very, very out of character mistakes for him this year. I don't know what's going on. He's had reliable hands his entire rookie year, and he's made some very, very bad drops and unfortunate plays so far in 2023. They're prioritizing Curtis Samuel over him. I don't get it. I love the talent. I don't get it. Another player that I love, but it certainly is not working out, and I have no backbone to defend him at this very moment. Love the talent. Don't know what's going to happen. Jameson Williams. Mike Evans, you can put here because of, the production that he's had, even with his old age. And then we got some unknowns here with Treylon Burks. We haven't seen Treylon Burks. He's only played a couple games. It's not looked good. The quarterback situation is bad. D-Hop was kind of dominating the offense. I still love this player. I still love his talent, but I have to hold my hands up and say, at the moment, it doesn't look good for anyone who has Treylon Burks. The hope for Treylon Burks is that this team, as they start to sell off pieces, they already sold Kevin Byard. The hope, you do not sell Burks right now, by the way. The hope is that they finally find a real quarterback in next year's draft. They are finally tearing it all down, which you don't send one of the best safeties in the NFL away if you're not tearing it down. and let's get a Michael Penix in there. Let's get a Gardner Minshew in there for a bridge year.
Right.
So there's a very realistic scenario where, like, similar to Nico Collins, you don't sell, you don't give up on the talent, but you wait for the situation to get better. And I hate to do it, Badaki, I'm sorry. This is where I would have Quentin Johnson and then Romeo Doubs.
Romeo.
I know you're a big Johnston guy. I've said it on a couple of videos. I don't have any stock of him in Dynasty League, so my heart isn't really in a place where I can discuss how I feel from a Dynasty perspective, like as a player. But is there anything you want to say on him? Because I know it's too early to really count him out completely, and maybe I have him too low. It's just... Look, maybe I'm overreacting. I don't know.
With everything that we've seen so far, like, all of these players are valid to be ahead of him, right? Like,
yeah,
I completely agree. I can't argue that. I would say this: we haven't seen the snap share, we haven't seen the production from him. But what I have seen, because I have watched some 22 film in the last 2 games, there are clear opportunities where Quentin Johnson is open for Justin Herbert, but he's going only to his first read. Which is very interesting. Not saying Justin Herbert is a bad quarterback whatsoever, but he is only looking at Keenan Allen. And oddly enough, when you look at Keenan, somehow Josh Palmer is in that either level underneath him or the level above Keenan Allen, if that makes any sense. So they're not using Quentin in that way that we all expected to. Now, the next biggest thing that I know a lot of people would say is that, well, he hasn't beaten out Josh Palmer. I don't think that he is utilized he should be in reality playing the Josh Palmer role, not the Mike Williams role. But anyways, I can't really argue. I know a lot of people are saying, Quentin's a bust. How can a person be a bust when he's not even getting the ball? Now, if he got, 10 targets, dropped every pass and still not producing, I get it. I really don't have an argument. But my guy is not getting the opportunity.
There's 2 things that I've observed. I mean, like, I am a strong believer that targets are earned, and he's not earning targets. So I'll start there. That is a concern. It doesn't mean that he's a bust. It doesn't mean that won't happen this year. It's just at the moment he's not earning targets. And there was talks about him beating out Mike Williams. I think it's safe to say that would not have happened this year at all. But the second thing I'll say is, to me, you talked about him playing the Palmer role. I would actually say he's best suited to play the Keenan Allen role out of the slot. Like, I think he's best suited to play that slot role. What did we love about Quentin? At least what did I love about him? I loved what he did after the catch.
Right.
He was never really like this, go up at the catch point and dominate. He had some questionable hands, but I loved what he could do when you got him in space after the catch. And we haven't really seen that be a possibility. And I'm not so certain that will happen for him. So there's some concern, but look, it's a tough play. Like, I'll say this, with Johnston, with Burks, with Jameson, with Dotson, I don't think you sell them right now. I think you hold, and maybe you hold them into oblivion, but I just don't think there's a trade out there that's worth selling them for.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I don't personally think he is a bust.
It's too early to say that.
At the moment, but yeah, look, we just have to wait for the opportunity. And one of my biggest things still was that Mike Evans is potentially going to be, or Williams, is potentially going to be gone next year. They do have an out, and same thing with Keenan Allen. He has an out in 2024. Now that also concerns, if they continue to lose, they can get a top wide receiver with him as well. Like, if somehow they get Mara Harrison, it's like over.
Oh yeah,
it is dead. But I think this team will get better. Everyone else on this tier, though, I would back. How can you trust Jerry Jeudy? What the hell is happening with Jahan? Jameson,
third.
And Jameson's
yeah.
Interesting. It's like he's getting the targets.
It's just not working out.
It's just not working out. And
it's not really ideal to force Jameson into the game plan when you're down by 30 either.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a little bit unfair, but I hear it.
Do you love the way they're utilizing him though? Because I'm not in love with it.
Really.
I don't love that he's just that deep threat person. Yeah. I want him to be.
I understand why they're doing it, but I felt like if he was in a different, like, to me, if Jameson Williams doesn't injure his ACL, maybe he gets drafted by a different team, and maybe he's used in a different way.
Right.
But to be a glorified MVS right now, which is what he is.
Yeah,
it's so sad. It's so sad for me to see.
And that was one of the things I've hinted of him coming in. I didn't believe that was going to be true, but I did say, like, is he just going to be a deep ball threat because Amon-Ra's there? Amon-Ra is a target hot in the slot, where Jameson.
It's unfortunate for him.
It is unfortunate. So
I will also give some props to Josh Downs for a second. What I will say is Gardner Minshew is not the future of that team.
Yep.
So Josh Downs was pretty average for fantasy with Anthony Richardson under center. And unless you believe that A-Rich is going to make a huge, huge jump in his second year, which is completely possible, just be aware that Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson are going to produce two very different fantasy assets for you in Dynasty. That's all I'll say. But Josh Downs, definitely a very talented player.
Yep, completely agreed on everyone else. I mean, look, love the tier, love the list. I think you did well.
It's tough, man. It is tough right now to make these rankings. I'll just say a couple names that I want to just mention that didn't make the tier 8, but they could have. Adam Thielen. You know, one of those names where it's like, you really don't want Thielen unless you're competing. I didn't put Elijah Moore in there. I've not seen enough, and I am not convinced that Deshaun Watson is actually good anymore.
Yeah, I think that is big. That's big.
Michael Wilson is right on the edge for me. I love him. He's been a buy for me all year. Hopefully you guys bought him when he was at price of like wide receiver 80. And then Tutu Atwell, Jonathan Mingo, Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Jaden Reed are some names I want to shout out. But yeah.
Okay.
What I will say is, if you guys want updated Dynasty rankings, we update our rankings over on the Flock Fantasy website, our Dynasty rankings pretty consistently. So go check that out. Use the promo code LAND when you sign up to get 30% off. And check that out in the description. If you choose that top tier when you sign up, the Mother Flocker tier, you will also get a Dynasty team breakdown where we break down your entire team and give you some advice on what are the next moves that you can make. But that is it for today. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in the next video. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy, even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.